Let me start with some beautiful incident. Once Lord Mountbatten of Burma visited a bookshop in Calcutta and he heard someone asking, "Have you got Sen's Hamlet?" "I have got Mukherjee's Hamlet," replied the shopkeeper. So Mountbatten decided to quit earlier as his Shakespeare was being replaced by Mukherjee and Chatterjee in India. So the language of the English people, far from being insular, linguistically and culturally, has become the most powerful vehicle of modern thought around the world. English arrived in various regions of Asia and Africa as part of British imperialism, as part of the white man's burden to dominate those who had been subjugated politically and economically. In fact, it was introduced as an instrument to preserve the hegemony and hierarchy created by imperialist rulers. Admittedly, it ended the unhealthy sway of European culture. In 2 centuries, English struck such deep roots in the land of its implantation that presumably the number of people who spoke it as a second and foreign language has by now exceeded the number of native speakers. It is now imperative to say that over a period of time, through its abundant use as the first language, second language, and of course the official language across the globe, the British have had to forfeit ownership and proprietary rights over their language. As the use of English widens, it is becoming more localized with the different cultures absorbing words and expressions from their own languages to make an English of their own. This language continues to bask in global sunshine. The extent of variation in its uses, its structure, and in its pronunciation has become too bewildering. No longer able to hold out against the onslaught from all corners, it is feared the Queen's English will soon become unrecognizable. There must be some substance in the agony expressed, sometimes ago, of course, by the right wing Cambridge academic John Kerry. He said, "World English is the worst thing that could happen to us. It will mean that English of England and the British Isles will come to be seen as just one dialect among the many. We will be engulfed by computer speak, international science speak, UNESCO speak, and international business lingo. The lexicographers of the new millennium are rather nonplussed to find that the growing status of English has stimulated the spread of language, like some tropical plant spreading its gigantic tendrils. English remains no longer the foreign oppressor's language, nor is it exclusive or elitist. It has become the common property of millions of ordinary people across the globe. English can no longer be said to be a British language as originally held by James Murray in his first Oxford English Dictionary. It is now a house of many mansions, as Doris Lessing would have put it. English continues to be the language of opportunity, science, and technology, and so on, that has given rise to a number of varieties of English which Braj Kachru calls world Englishes. English could not remain limited to Britain. When the Mayfair sailed with all those English people who were later known as Americans, it went along too. And in the unexplored continent, influenced by the Redskins, it flourished. When the convicts were shipped to Australia, it went along with their Aboriginal language and grew. But when the settlers and explorers went to Canada and made homes there, in the heart of the French domain, it reigned too. In the colonial era, in order to ensure that work went on smoothly and a new class was created, English was taught to the natives, and in the process, this language became a part of their politics. Once confined to a remote era, English in 2 centuries struck such deep roots in other lands. One can see it as an interesting linguistic phenomenon in the Indian scenario that a larger number of Indians speak and write the language than under British rule. The same was the case with many other countries as well. And today, it is native language for more than 30 countries, including Great Britain, Ireland, the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. It is the second language in about 75 countries, including India, Pakistan, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and again, it is a foreign language for Japan, China, Russia, West Germany, Saudi Arabia, and others. By the end of the 16th century, the number of native speakers of English was supposed to have been between 5 and 7 millions. Between the end of Queen Elizabeth I's reign in 1603 and beginning of the reign of Elizabeth II in 1952, the figure grew to be around 250 millions. Now, an estimated number of more than 1500 million people are exposed to English according to an observation made by great linguist David Crystal. The language has expanded rapidly with its rich vocabulary, of which 80% is foreign borrowed from Spanish, French, Hebrew, Arabic, Hindi, Urdu, Chinese, and so on. Now we have Indian English, Australian English, Canadian English, Caribbean English, American English, New Zealand English, and even within Britain, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh English. There is one group in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, of course, generally called South Asian English. There is yet another group in the former British colonies in West Africa and another group in the former British colonies in East Africa. In the UK too, there are different dialects of English. The language spoken in Wales or Scotland is much different from what is spoken in the south. There are between 200 and 300 languages spoken in London alone. People sometimes say English accents and dialects are dying out, but more accurately, it is a small number of rural accents dying out, replaced by new urban ones, some of which cool British youngsters find extremely exciting. For instance, Jamaican and many Asian English speakers use a different stress pattern, stressing each syllable of a word instead of just one. Many Asian languages also have what linguists call a question tag, a one word device to turn any sentence into a question. British Asians have recently adopted the Cockney sounding, the word is innit, INNIT, question mark, to stand in for their native question tag. And interestingly, Indonesians quite often combine an Indonesian suffix, prefix, preposition, or possessive noun with an English word. In Singapore, the government finds the English trend a nuisance, which tends to blend English with words from other languages, such as Chinese dialects. The English language, the standard West Indian language as it is written and spoken on the English speaking islands, had really started as a pidgin, the means of communication between white English, French, Dutch, Spanish, and Portuguese masters and their black slaves. In 400 years of colonial rule, the pidgin attained a lovely and colorful colloquial tone. Often the pattern was embellished with genuine English words. And about Americans. The Americans, like Indians, went through a phase of getting rid of the British, but adopted their language and allowed it to flourish on American soil. The resultant language is somewhat different from its British counterpart, of course, which prompted Bernard Shaw to say, England and America are two countries separated by the same language. Since the latter has followed the former as a place where, in the words of Professor Higgins, Bernard Shaw's character in Pygmalion, English has completely disappeared. The Americans have freed their language from the tyranny of a passive voice. When the British signboard says trespassing prohibited, the American version would be do not walk. Yes is the only way of expressing agreement, we all know. America, on the other hand, with somewhat less cultured ancestors, has its own way of saying yes. Yankees have a plethora of words replacing the bland yes with yep, yup, yeah, and sometimes yes. YASS. The man from Cambridge, England, and the man from Cambridge, USA, speak two different languages. The Englishman gets his railway ticket from a booking club. The American buys it from a ticket seller. One buys his toothpaste from a chemist while the other gets it from a druggist. Don't overtake becomes don't pass in the US. When a receptionist in a British hotel asks, may I help you? It really suggests what is your business here? You cannot be loitering about this place. In Britain, if you knock up a woman, you awaken her in the morning by banging on her bedroom door. In the US, the same phrase means that you make her pregnant. An Englishman asked an American lady, how many children do you have? And it provoked laughter, as do means always. An American lady was asked to remove her waist by a British doctor. He meant her undershirt, but in American English it meant underwear. The situation was embarrassing. That the increasing malapropism, deviation of English from what is pure, sophisticated literary English, mutilation of words and phrasings, misplaced, altering the very meaning they are intended to convey in the context. Leave alone atrocious spelling, which is not merely confined to any business circle, and less hoardings and advertisements extolling the virtues of certain products, but mostly surprising of all, it has even made inroads into the media, and the intelligentsia for that may be viewed with trepidation as to the future trend of English by those who profess to be the literary watchdogs and grammatical priests alike. Not to speak of the newspapers, often writing roughshod over the English language, not infrequently in arbitrary fashion, in broadcasting, telecasting, blogs as well. More often than not, English has become none too flawless. Linguists are of the view that the dilution of the English language reflects changes things, processes, quality of man, and the society he lives in. So one has to constantly bring one's vocabulary up to date and change one's accents to keep oneself in style. Small wonder then that had Shakespeare been resurrected from his Stafford grave, he would find himself to be a semi-literate Briton, as more than 90% English was would be unfamiliar to him. So, needless to say, the major changes in the English language took place after massive influx into America following World War II. Jews, Italians, and Africans crowded into that country with their traditions, lifestyle styles, and shaped up the English language in their own way. New words came directly from the cine world, consumers, journalists, and advertisers. Headline makers did further damage by coining words like sit in, go slow. Interestingly, as new words shape in, old ones vanish, the picture of a nude girl is no longer a pin-up, it is a playmate. A hippie swinger now has to say one small sentence to get his message across. Hyped mind having a swing. Instant coffee indeed. Modern times have been punctuated with evidence that most people now think that grammar is strictly for the birds. Subjunctives are used in subjective fashion. Infinitives are split with impunity, and most users believe that syntax is something the revenue department claims to be promiscuous behavior. Even a 3 decades earlier report of the chief examiner of London University had suggested that more and more candidates regarding spelling, punctuation, sentence structure as esoteric art. All this goes on to suggest that the British monarchy has not only lost its empire but also its English. Oxford English, the much mocked accent of the British ruling class, slowly lost ground to regional accents. If we watch a 30s British film, we may see the hero mumble, "Yes, my puppet, will you marry me?" And his puppet replies, "Thank you, I'll." Hopefully, London dwelling Scotchmen carefully preserve their native accent, throwing in a few Scotticisms to make their point. The BBC, which once used to insist that its on air staff spoke Oxford English, also started recruiting people who do not. The linguists renamed the real version received pronunciation. To be fair, the purity of the language got diluted with the entry of a bevy of outlandish expressions in the concise English dictionary. That purity suffered a further erosion with Collins, having blurred the distinction between the written word and the computer savvy generation's manner of expression that cannot even be equated with colloquialism or slang. So the dictionary now bristles with such words as hai, may, expression of dissatisfaction. These are more noisy cases. Hey, how. So purists may reject the shortened form like OMG, oh my god, SOZ. Such distortions are comparable to the SMS generation's use of U for UYUU and NIT night for NIGST. Even the Times London had traced such expressions, describing them as grunts and sighs that are so common in computerized networking. Informal English permits expressions like cold temperatures, a young age, cheap prices, fast speeds, etc. A day may be cold, the year may be cold, even the weather may be cold, but can a temperature being only a number be cold? People can be young, but an age cannot be. Goods can be cheap, but a price cannot be. And if you always say crushed out and stormed into instead of was defeated, progressed into, tryst instead of meeting, scam for any criminal activity, sleuth for any policeman, party leader for any unelected politician, then you are having a tryst with English or English it is rendered in India. English has over the past decades absorbed the colorful nuances of the land, making it a vibrant language. In fact, both the languages are widely used across India through hybridization. It seems to be an Indianized version of the once colonial language. English has got a vibrant life of its own, as the hit song Remember Quo Vadis showed a few years ago. People are accustomed to preponing the proposed meeting. This is made in India opposite of postponing. They are supposed to keep cool. They are supposed to use cool for everything as it were. That is, youngsters use it like a noun, pronoun, adjective, verb, adverb, conjunction, article, everything else under the sun. Everyone is dude here from waited the boss. They are delighted in exchanging smileys in sign language. No man is used when talking to males, females, animals. They have any sense of appreciation. Interestingly, a decade ago, a body called the Queen's English Society in Britain, which had crusaded for good English for 40 years, collapsed owing to public apathy. It is ironic that the society itself wrote and punctuated English so badly that no one took much notice of it. All these things, and of course, more than those things, you'll find in my book. The book is English Quo Vadis, English Whither Goest Thou?